the 7 o'clock talk, and tonight we are going to talk about the dark side of the food industry. And Jessica, when I told her this, she goes, "Oh, I have a little story to relay." So I'll let her start by opening us up with the story.
Now, I did see this on Facebook, so how legit it is, I don't know because I did not check it out because I have not been into the Walmart lately and hate going to the Walmart. But supposedly, a lady had posted up. She had an old can of corn. It's still good, but it was an older, couple months ago can of corn, and she went to the Walmart and bought more canned corn, and it's just the Walmart brand, and it was sweet corn, and one package had like gluten free. This is good for you. Um, the nutritional value on the back, it was 45 calories per serving, and it was packaged in like Phoenix or Philadelphia, something that started with a P. Anyway, um, the second can that she just purchased had no "it's good for you" label. It did not carry the gluten free label. It said it was 90 calories. It carried a warning label for pesticides and chemicals, and it was um, packaged in Thailand. So um, pay attention to your labels.
So that's a big thing. I want to talk about the dark side of the food industry. And when I say the dark side of the food industry, it didn't start out ill intended. It started out by wanting to feed the world, and that's how it started. It also started with how cardiovascular disease was getting worse in the United States. And so I forget which president it was, but he decided that he needed help. We need to get this cardiovascular disease under control. Heart attacks are going crazy. Let's do something about this. And then two things simultaneously happened. Earl Butz said, "Hey, farmers, you got to either go big or go home." And this is when farmers started to not be able to feed themselves without going to the grocery store. And so they had to get big, and this is when monocropping started. Then you had the attack by Ansel Keys on fat, saying that fat is bad for you. And so we started to subsidize, or we started to substitute fat for sugar. So we started to add more sugar to things because sugar is a great softener, preservative. It it hits the dopamine centers of the brain. They've done all these studies. And in the description of this video, there are several links. There's a study to the rats that they got addicted to cocaine and sugar water, and the how they got how they got to see what the rats would go to. We also have in there Dr. Robert Lustig's "Sugar: The Bitter Truth." I did put a interview with Dr. Hyman. This is kind of what started this for me. Dr. Hyman had a another little tick.
Mm-hmm. She's
Doc,
over here trying to do CPR on this little mouse.
on the dead mouse. So Dr. Hyman had a guest on that is from, I think it was Quest Nutrition. I forget. No, it was Hugh. HU. So they make chocolates and they do all kinds of stuff that is whole foods. And so they have the human company, which is what leads to all of these things that basically getting back to real food. And so this dark side of the food industry, it ties into our health. If you look at ultra processed foods and the usage of ultra processed foods and how those foods, as we increased on our dependency on ultra processed food, you can also see our health, our baseline health going down. And that's that's why a lot of chronic diseases, and we're talking about the chronic diseases of arthritis. We're talking about oh God, diabetes, even Alzheimer's and dementia, neurodegenerative diseases are being called diabetes type 3. These things all have their roots in this ultra processed food. It's being linked to it every day through the research. And so you cannot, honestly, with the way they're adulterating the food, we're taking our food sovereignty and we're moving it to other countries. We can't do that. We have to get back to the grassroots level of taking care of ourselves. Our founding fathers had a huge need for self sufficiency, self reliance. Benjamin Franklin, I believe, called it self reliance. And we've gotten away from self reliance. And how do you make a food? So let's go back into the 70s and what we're subsidizing. So to make it profitable for the farmers, we started to subsidize chemicals and we started to subsidize the fuel for the trucks and we subsidize the seed and we give them crop insurance. And the thing about crop insurance is if you have I'm not a farmer, this is what I have read, and I don't know if it has changed, but if you're a farmer and you do corn, you can't have other crops on your fields or in your fields because that nullifies your I'm sure somebody will correct me, but that nullifies your crop insurance. And so farmers are not allowed to really compete. And now food has gone from food to a commodity. So it's whoever can grow the most, the biggest, the fastest, and get it to market. And it's not about quality anymore. And we have a problem in the United States with this wanting everything cheap and easy. Remember, Dr. Hyman actually makes a quote that we're 4% of the world's population. I've made the quote that we're 3 to 5%, depending on what you say. His quote was that we're 4%, and I have read where we were 30% of the deaths during the pandemic, and he quotes 16%. That's still a 4x, 4-time multiplication of deaths according to population. We shouldn't have been that. We should have only been about 4%. But our food industry keeps us ill. They keep us sick. Watch that Hyman. Hey, I think she's going to learn to open the door.
She does know
Watch that Hyman interview.
The garden hose is keeping it shut.
Because they really break that down. They really go through that for you and explain it step by step by step. And when you have that explanation, when you can see what they do. So to keep it, once again, shelf stable, what do they have to do to keep it shelf stable? You either have to preserve it with sugar or you have to preserve it with salt. And when you have to preserve it with sugar or preserve it with salt, then you got to take things out. And what do they take out? Fat and fiber, because fiber is what actually breaks down too. And your microbiome depends on that fiber to maintain itself and then to grow and then to proliferate. And we take all of that out. And that's why we keep seeing a problem with the microbiome. You know, I love my profession of chiropractic. I love my profession of functional medicine. But the industries that feed us our supplements have a way of turning around and making a supplement for everything. And so it's not without due cause, but if we just had real food, we could go back to having illnesses that are crisis illnesses and not illnesses of lifestyle. So when we look at a couple of things I want to say about this is there's a there is when we are looking at chemicals that are in our foods, the FDA has something that is called GRAS status, generally recognized as safe. And a lot of those foods that are generally recognized as safe have not been tested, and they have just been grandfathered in. And so now, like trans fats have been shown that they are not safe, and they are still not out of the food system. And so, when are they going to take this out? When are they going to be actually forced to remove these things that are killing us slowly? So it's a slow death that is a costly death. America, hands down, we spend the most money on military. We outspend the next 10 countries combined on our military. Guess what? We also spend the most money at healthcare. And our healthcare outcomes for critical diseases or for accidents, traumas, critical care like that, our outcomes are fabulous. But once you take it out of the realm of healthcare or out of trauma care, then all of a sudden we're way low on the the top countries. Like I think we're 23rd or 25th, and we are behind countries like Argentina and Bolivia and Cuba, and that's just not acceptable. And where does it all come from? And if you look at the countries that we actually export our food to, you see they start to follow the same trend. It is our food system. Absolutely watch the videos that are linked at below. Bliss Point, um, Dr. Robert Lustig's Sugar the Bitter Truth, uh, Hyman's interview with the owner of Hugh. Those are all fabulous interviews, and they start to give you traction. A couple of books that I just finished reading, The Glucose Revolution. If you have a problem with blood sugar and blood sugar regulation, read this. She's got 10 hacks. We put several of the hacks on our Facebook and did a post about those. They work wonderfully well. And then this is one that Dr. Hyman recommended. Status quo thinking is harming our health. And that is from an MD that died from cancer. And she is telling us, well, I don't know what she's telling us. Dr. Hyman said that's a good read, so I will read it. I have the gist of it, but I haven't read it yet. And so, last couple of points I want to make are don't believe everything you see and read in mainstream media. I have a point I just learned actually. There is a department in the Pentagon, in the Department of Justice, that is there to influence movies and push an agenda. And so you can go on and read this and look at the Department of Defense movie budget and Department of Defense top 10 movies that they have backed, funded, and given permission to do things for. And so I'll give you the list of the top 10 movies that the Department of Defense had a hand in the making and production of. Number one, no kidding, Avengers. Number two, Top Gun Maverick. Yeah. Number three, Iron Man 3. Number four, Transformers Dark Side of the Moon. Number five, Captain America Civil War. Number six, Captain Marvel. And those are the ones that were the latest, and they are in that top 5 and 6. because of the amount of money that they made. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, that was, if you remember watching that one, that pushed the agenda of the Nazis and looked at the Nazis and how America fought against them. Then Armageddon. And once we had Armageddon, if you remember that one, that was the comet that was going to come and destroy the world, and we end up saving the world. Twister and Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. So they get their messaging into the media, and those are just the movies. That doesn't include television and film, and we see a lot of that type of messaging. I mean, just watch the television and you'll hear all the messaging. So if this is important to you, here's going to be my plug. If this is important to you, you got to think about how you're going to vote and how you're going to vote to save your children and your grandchildren and stuff like that, because this food stuff, it absolutely matters. And if you don't think it matters, look at our budget for healthcare. It's absolutely breaking us, and there's going to come a point when we can no longer afford it. So, anything else you want to add?
Nope.
All right. Well, that's it for tonight. Links in the description for the other videos. I did post a video on the side, and that was a Elon Musk interview with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I would absolutely, I mean, if you're tired of the two-party system, you're tired of the fighting and the bullying and whatever else, check it out and educate yourself, and then vote your conscience. Thank you. Have a good evening.
We